The Cycle of Monarchs. The fifth cycle begins. Part 1. The king has disappeared once again at the end of what should be his last cycle. However, there are rumours that he has not actually died. Government spokespeople have at this stage refused to comment on these rumours, neither confirming nor denying the presence or otherwise of a body. Plans for the funeral or memorial service have not yet been announced. Now, for those who would like a review of the royal history, we now have a special interview with a palace historian. Let's go over to our palace reporter for more. Good morning, Dr. Roynott. Thank you for agreeing to this interview. Not at all. So, as our expert in the royal family and its history, and perhaps the history of the kingdom in general, could you give us a brief outline? Well, it would be difficult for any outline of the royal family to be truly brief, considering how far back it goes. If you believe all the stories, then the first king was Lord Ryan himself, who was said to have lived 100 cycles and infused and set up the royal line and then simply disappeared generations before any other royal regeneration cycle started. But let's not get ahead of ourselves or too distracted by mythology. Shall we start with the basics and outline the cycles themselves? So, as many of your listeners probably know, our current king and all of the last few monarchs have had stages where they seem to disappear and then are found again some years later looking slightly different, but with the same character and memories and the same claim to the royal tokens. Most refer to this process as a cycle, or sometimes as a regeneration. Each cycle, with both the time reigning and the time missing, usually lasts about 50 years. Just to pause you there, Doctor, you mentioned the legendary first king. Some say that there are stories about him simply going into some sort of magical hibernation and supposed prophecies about his return. As I said, there is a mythology surrounding him, and yes, that mythology includes some stories to that effect. There were some tales about him having longer cycles too, but back to history. The monarchy and the kingdom were established under mortal monarchs sometime before the first formally recognised king. We don't know how long before, as our records at that time were rather limited. And yes, it is technically possible that the founder of that part of the monarchy may have had some regenerative ability that would have given them some momentum in the founding. However, the first recognised king, that is to say, the first recognised regenerative monarch, having 2 cycles, ruled for 1 century. That is to say, his cycles covered 1 century. This opening era, known as the Rise, that is, the rise of the regenerative monarchs, this period covered 21 centuries, with the rest of the monarchs lasting either 4 or 5 cycles before we entered the Silver Age, which covered approximately 140 millennia, depending on whether or not you include what some refer to as the Electrum era. Over both these eras, from the beginning of the Rise, the quality of the kingdom seems to have steadily improved. Not only did the average lifespan mentioned in the records increase with each monarchy, but we also repeatedly see records mentioning an apparent decrease in poverty and unemployment as well. So technology would have been improving? Undoubtedly. The stability provided by a steady monarch, even with the brief periods of downtime, would have made space for academic and educational advances. And the growing unity of the kingdom helped as well. But to continue, after the Silver Age came, as one might guess, the Golden Age. This era spanned an incredible 200 millennia, until the Great Decline. Yes, we're not currently in the Golden Age still, so tell us what happened. The Great Decline, also known as the First Cataclysm, was the decline in the cycles of the monarchs. Considering the short period of time over which it happened, I suppose it was sort of more of a crash, really. It took only 7.5 centuries of declining monarchs before we entered the Dark Age, also known as the Second Cataclysm, and we're back to mortal kings. Thank you, Doctor. I'd love to ask you what you think caused the decline, but I don't think we have time for that today. Before we go, though, perhaps you could just cover our more recent history? Well, we currently seem to be in a sort of recovery stage. And as some may know, our last 50 monarchs have had 4 cycles each, after a number of 2 and 3 cycle monarchs. And what is more, the kingdom seems to also be recovering and reuniting. So either the new monarch could be out there somewhere right now, or even our own king, if these rumours and theories are true about a 5th cycle. It is possible. That was the end of part 1 of the Cycle of Monarchs. Thank you for listening.